The flight attendant grabbed my arm at the gate and whispered something that changed everything. "Pretend you're sick and don't board this plane." Her eyes held pure terror. 20 minutes later, I understood why. But before we continue, subscribe to Silken Real Life Revenge. Click the notification bell because we have new stories every single day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. I stood at gate 47 in Seattle-Tacoma Airport, boarding pass in hand, ready to fly to New York for a business meeting. My wife Melissa had kissed me goodbye that morning, her smile bright and perfect like always. My best friend Travis had texted me good luck just an hour ago. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. The gate agent called for Zone 2 boarding, and I stepped forward with my carry-on bag. That's when she appeared. A flight attendant with short brown hair and a name tag that read, Nina, touched my elbow gently. Her voice was barely a whisper, urgent and shaking. "Sir, please pretend you're feeling sick. Don't board this flight." I froze, confused, searching her face for a joke or explanation. But her expression was deadly serious, almost pleading. My heart started pounding. "What? Why?" I whispered back. She glanced around nervously, then squeezed my arm. "Trust me. Please. Your life depends on it." Before I could respond, she walked away quickly, disappearing into the jetway. I stood there paralyzed, passengers flowing around me like water around a rock. My mind raced with questions. Was this some kind of security threat? A bomb? A hijacking? But Nina hadn't called security. She'd only warned me. Specifically me. The gate agent called my name over the speaker. Final boarding call for passenger Kyle Bennett, Zone 2. My hand trembled as I held my boarding pass. Every logical part of my brain screamed to board the plane. I had an important presentation tomorrow. My boss was counting on me. But something in Nina's eyes had been real. Raw fear. Not the kind you fake. I made a split-second decision. Clutching my chest, I stumbled backward and sat down heavily in a chair. "I don't feel good," I said loudly to no one in particular. An airport worker rushed over. "Sir, are you all right?" I shook my head, playing up the act. "My chest feels tight. I think I need to see a doctor." Within minutes, they'd called medical assistance. I watched through the window as my plane pushed back from the gate and taxied away without me. The paramedics checked my vital signs in a small medical room. My heart rate was elevated, but that was from genuine anxiety, not illness. They recommended I rest and see my doctor soon. I assured them I would and walked out into the terminal, my legs feeling like rubber. I found a quiet corner and sat down, my phone already buzzing with messages. My boss asking if I'd landed yet. A colleague confirming dinner plans in Manhattan. And 3 missed calls from Melissa. I stared at her name on my screen, something cold settling in my stomach. Why did I feel hesitant to call her back? I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring, her voice breathless. "Kyle. I just got a notification that you didn't board. What happened?" "I felt sick," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Chest pains. They're checking me out now." "Oh my God, are you okay? Should I come get you?" Her concern sounded genuine. Too genuine. "No, I'm fine. Just going to head home and rest." There was a pause, just a fraction too long. "Okay. I'll see you soon then." We hung up. I sat in my car in the airport parking garage, engine running but going nowhere. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. I pulled up the flight tracker app on my phone and searched for Flight 847 to JFK. Status, in flight. Departure on time. Everything appeared normal. So why had Nina warned me? My phone buzzed again. This time it was Travis. "Hey man, heard you missed your flight. You good?" I stared at the message. How did Travis know? I hadn't told him. Melissa must have. But why would she call Travis before I even made it to my car? They were friends, sure. Travis had been my best friend since college, and he and Melissa got along great. Too great, sometimes, I'd joke. But it was always just a joke. Wasn't it? I started driving home instead of rebooking my flight. The city streets blurred past as my mind spun with possibilities. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the stress of work was getting to me. But I couldn't shake Nina's terrified expression or the way she'd said, "Your life depends on it." That wasn't about a mechanical issue with the plane. I pulled onto my street 40 minutes later. Our house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, a two-story craftsman with blue shutters that Melissa had picked out 3 years ago. Her silver Honda wasn't in the driveway, which was odd since she'd said she'd be working from home today. I parked on the street instead of pulling into the garage. Some instinct told me to be quiet. To observe. I walked up to the front door and noticed it was unlocked. Melissa never left the door unlocked. I pushed it open slowly, listening. Music played faintly from upstairs. Something jazzy and smooth. The kind of music Melissa played when she was relaxed. When we were alone. Except I was supposed to be in New York. My hands started shaking as I set down my bag quietly in the entryway. I could hear voices now. Low and muffled through the ceiling. A woman's laugh. Then a deeper voice responding. Male. My heart hammered against my ribs as I climbed the stairs, each step careful and silent. The bedroom door at the end of the hall was slightly open, soft light spilling through the crack. I stood outside that door for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. My whole body had gone cold, numb, like I was watching myself from somewhere else. I could turn around. Walk away. Pretend I'd never come home early. But I couldn't unknow what I was about to know. I pushed the door open. The scene that greeted me was worse than any nightmare. Melissa and Travis were in our bed, tangled together, laughing at something on his phone. They didn't notice me at first, too absorbed in their own world. A world I apparently wasn't part of. Melissa saw me first. Her face went from relaxed to horrified in an instant. She screamed and grabbed the sheets, pulling them up. Travis turned, and the color drained from his face. "Kyle," he started, scrambling to stand up. I held up my hand, stopping him. My voice when I spoke was eerily calm. Too calm. "Don't." That single word carried more weight than any outburst could have. I looked at Melissa, this woman I'd married 4 years ago, who I'd trusted with everything. "How long?" She opened her mouth, closed it, tears streaming down her face. "Kyle, please, let me explain." "How long?" I repeated, my voice still flat and emotionless. Travis grabbed his clothes from the floor, his hands shaking. "Man, I'm sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen like this." I laughed then, a hollow sound that didn't sound like me. How was it supposed to happen? After I died on that plane? The room went silent. Both of them stared at me with identical expressions of shock. "What?" Melissa whispered. I turned and walked out, their voices calling after me, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove. No destination. Just away. The rain started falling as I merged onto the highway, fat drops that blurred the windshield and matched the chaos in my head. My phone rang constantly. Melissa. Travis. I ignored them all. Hours passed. The city gave way to suburbs, then to rural roads I didn't recognize. I finally pulled over at a rest stop, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. That's when I saw the news alert on my phone. Flight 847 makes emergency landing after mechanical failure. My blood ran cold. I clicked the article. The plane had experienced a critical engine problem 30 minutes into the flight. They'd diverted to Portland. No injuries, but passengers described moments of pure terror. I sat there reading and rereading the article. The flight attendant had known. Somehow, Nina had known that plane was going to have problems. She'd saved my life. But why warn only me? Unless it wasn't just about the plane. The pieces started clicking together in my head like a horrific puzzle. Melissa's 2 quick calls when I didn't board. Travis knowing I'd missed the flight. The unlocked door. Their complete lack of surprise at being caught, only at me being there. What if they'd wanted me on that plane? What if they'd been hoping for an accident? I pulled up my banking app with trembling fingers. Our joint account showed normal activity. But when I checked our savings account, I noticed something strange. Melissa had transferred $50,000 to an account I didn't recognize 2 weeks ago. I dug deeper into our finances, something I'd stupidly let Melissa handle completely. More transfers. Smaller amounts over the past 6 months, always to that same unknown account. Nearly $200,000 total. Money I'd been saving for years, gone. My life insurance policy sat in my glove compartment. I'd updated it 6 months ago, right before a big promotion. I opened the policy with shaking hands. $2 million, with Melissa as the sole beneficiary. I'd signed it during a busy week, trusting her to handle the details since she worked in insurance. I stared at those numbers and felt physically sick. They'd been planning this. Not just an affair. Something worse. Something that required me to be gone permanently. The rain pounded harder against my windshield. I needed proof. I needed to understand exactly what I'd stumbled into. I pulled out my laptop and connected to the rest stop's Wi-Fi. Using passwords I'd set up years ago, I accessed our shared cloud storage. Melissa thought I'd forgotten about it, that I never checked it. She was wrong. The folders loaded slowly. Photos. Documents. And one folder labeled TM Personal. Travis Morgan. Personal. My cursor hovered over it. Did I really want to know? Yes. I opened it. Inside were hundreds of messages between Melissa and Travis, dating back over a year. My hands shook as I read through them. Plans. Dreams. A future together. And scattered throughout, casual mentions of when Kyle's gone and after the insurance pays out. One message from 3 months ago made my blood freeze. Once he's on that flight to New York, everything will be different. I promise. I slammed my laptop shut, breathing hard. They'd actually planned it. Planned my death. The mechanical failure had been their opportunity, not something Nina predicted. But how had Nina known? I found her airline's customer service number and called, asking to speak with a supervisor about a safety concern on Flight 847. They transferred me 3 times before I reached someone who would listen. I need to speak with Flight Attendant Nina Rodriguez, I said. She prevented me from boarding a flight that later had a critical failure. I need to know how she knew. There was a long pause. Sir, that information is part of an ongoing investigation. I can't discuss it. Investigation? What investigation? Another pause. I really can't say more. But if you witnessed something relevant, you should contact this number. She gave me a phone number for the FBI. My hands went numb. The FBI? This was bigger than I thought. I called the number immediately. An agent named Carter answered and listened to my story. When I finished, there was a heavy silence. Mr. Bennett, are you somewhere safe right now? The question sent chills down my spine. Yes. Why? Agent Carter explained that Flight 847 hadn't just experienced mechanical failure. Initial investigations suggested tampering. Someone had accessed the maintenance systems using stolen credentials. They were building a case but needed more time. Nina Rodriguez reported suspicious activity before the flight, Carter said. She overheard 2 passengers discussing someone who wouldn't be coming back from New York. When she checked the manifest and saw your name with a notation she couldn't explain, she made a judgment call. What notation? I asked. Someone had flagged your ticket in the system. A code usually reserved for security concerns. But it wasn't official. We think someone on the inside was marking you. My throat went dry. My wife works in insurance. She has connections at the airline. Corporate accounts. Carter was silent for a moment. Mr. Bennett, I need you to come in. Don't go home. Don't contact your wife or anyone connected to her. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. I was a target, and the people who wanted me dead were closer than I'd ever imagined. I gave Carter my location and agreed to wait. While I waited, I made one more call. To a lawyer I'd met at a conference last year. Someone Melissa didn't know about. The lawyer, Harrison Blake, answered on the 3rd ring. I explained everything quickly, my words tumbling over each other. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Kyle, first, I'm glad you're alive. Second, don't sign anything, don't delete anything, and don't let them know you're aware of what's happening. Can you do that? What do you mean? They know I caught them. They know you caught them having an affair. They don't know you found the money transfers or the messages. You need to act devastated but clueless. Let them think you're just a heartbroken husband. Meanwhile, we build the case. Harrison explained that we needed to document everything carefully. The affair was one thing, but conspiracy to commit murder was something else entirely. We needed bank records, insurance documents, those messages, and cooperation with the FBI. Go home tonight, Harrison advised. Act broken. Emotional. Sleep in the guest room. Let Melissa try to explain. Record everything legally. Washington is a 2-party consent state for recording, so you'll need to be strategic. Agent Carter arrived 30 minutes later with another agent. They took my statement, copied everything from my laptop, and explained the investigation. I drove home that night in the dark, rehearsing what to say. The house lights were all on when I pulled up. Melissa's car sat in the driveway. Travis's truck was gone. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering courage. Then I walked inside. Melissa was waiting in the living room, her eyes red from crying. She stood when she saw me. Kyle, please, let me explain. I held up my hand, channeling every ounce of acting ability I had. I don't want to hear it right now. I can't. My voice broke convincingly. I just need to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Please, Melissa. Just give me space. I walked upstairs to the guest room and closed the door. Through the wall, I heard her crying. Part of me, a small part, felt guilty. But then I remembered those messages. When Kyle's gone. That erased any guilt. I lay awake all night, my phone recording audio as Harrison had instructed, listening to Melissa move around the house. Around 2 a.m., I heard her voice through the wall, talking on the phone. He doesn't know anything, she said quietly. He's just heard about us. We need to stick to the plan. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Melissa making breakfast. The domestic scene would have been touching if I didn't know the truth. She turned when she heard me, her expression carefully arranged into sadness and hope. I made your favorite. Pancakes. I sat down at the table, playing my role. We need to talk. She nodded, sitting across from me, her hands wringing together. Kyle, I'm so sorry. It just happened. Travis and we never meant to hurt you. How long? I asked again, knowing the answer. 6 months, she lied. I knew from the messages it had been over a year. I nodded slowly, letting the pain show on my face. It wasn't hard. The betrayal was real, even if my ignorance was fake. Do you love him? Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know. I'm confused. But I love you too. We can work through this. I almost laughed at the audacity. Instead, I stood up. I need some time. Maybe I should stay at a hotel for a few days. No. Her response was too quick, too urgent. She caught herself. I mean, please don't go. We should work on this together. I need space to think, I insisted. Just a few days. I packed a bag while Melissa watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. I'd already moved all critical documents to a safe deposit box yesterday with Harrison's help. Bank statements, the insurance policy, printouts of those messages. Everything we'd need. Kyle, Melissa said as I headed for the door. I really am sorry. And I'm glad you're okay. When I heard about the plane. She trailed off, and I turned to look at her. Yeah, I said quietly. Lucky I got sick, right? Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or calculation. I left before she could respond. I'd rented a furnished apartment across town under Harrison's advice. Somewhere safe where I could coordinate with the FBI and plan my next moves. Agent Carter called that afternoon. We've subpoenaed your wife's phone records and the airline's maintenance logs. We're building a case, but we need more time. Can you keep up the act? How much time? I asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. We need to connect all the dots. Travis Morgan is talking to a criminal defense attorney. He knows something's wrong. I spent the next several days playing the devastated husband. I met Melissa for coffee, listened to her apologies, let her think she was rebuilding my trust. All while wearing a recording device Harrison had legally obtained. Melissa's mask started slipping during our third meeting. We sat in our usual coffee shop, the place where I'd proposed to her 5 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. So what happens now? She asked, stirring her latte absently. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm trying to figure out if we can come back from this. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her touch made my skin crawl, but I didn't pull away. We can. I know we can. Travis meant nothing. It was just a mistake. A mistake that lasted over a year and involved planning my death, I thought. But I nodded. What about the money? I asked carefully. She froze. What money? I noticed some transfers from our savings. Large amounts. Where did they go? Her face went pale, then flushed. Oh. That. I invested it. In a business opportunity. I was going to surprise you. What business? She stumbled through an explanation about a startup, something vague and unconvincing. I pretended to accept it. Just wish you'd told me. That's our future. I know. I'm sorry. But it's going to pay off. I promise. The recording device in my jacket pocket captured every word, every lie. Agent Carter called me 2 nights later with an update. We've traced the maintenance system hack. The credentials used belong to someone your wife worked with at the insurance company. Someone who has access to airline partnerships. My stomach dropped. Who? Alan Foster. He's in custody now, cooperating. Says your wife paid him $50,000 to flag your ticket and create a maintenance issue timed to your flight. He got cold feet when he saw the passenger count and realized the danger, so he sabotaged it in a way that would force an emergency landing instead of a crash. I sat down heavily. She really tried to kill me. Mr. Bennett, we're ready to make arrests. Tomorrow morning. I need you to be somewhere safe and away from your wife. Can you do that? I assured him I could. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, Melissa and Travis would be arrested. Tomorrow, everything would be public. I called Harrison. Are you ready for this? He asked. It's going to get ugly. I'm ready, I said. What about the civil case? We'll file for divorce immediately and include fraud claims. With the criminal charges, we can freeze her access to assets and void the insurance policy. You'll get everything back and then some. The next morning, I watched from Agent Carter's office as FBI agents arrested Melissa at our house. She'd been sleeping, completely unaware. The body camera footage showed her confusion turning to terror as they read her rights. Conspiracy to commit murder. Wire fraud. Attempted insurance fraud. Each charge fell like a hammer. Travis was arrested at his apartment an hour later. He tried to run but made it only as far as the parking lot before they tackled him. Alan Foster had already been in custody, his cooperation bought with a plea deal. I watched all of this on multiple screens, feeling strangely disconnected. This woman I'd loved was a stranger. Someone capable of murder for money. The news broke that afternoon. Local woman arrested in murder-for-hire plot against husband. My phone exploded with calls and messages. Friends. Family. Coworkers. Everyone wanting to know if I was okay, if the news was real. I ignored them all except for a message from Nina Rodriguez. I'm glad you're safe. Trust your instincts. They'll save your life. I replied with a simple thank you, knowing I owed her everything. Without her warning, I'd be dead or grieving and oblivious while Melissa collected insurance money and lived happily with Travis. The preliminary hearing happened 2 weeks later. I sat in the courtroom, watching Melissa and Travis seated at separate defense tables. They wouldn't look at each other, their lawyers having advised them to distance themselves. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. The affair. The money transfers. The messages planning a future after Kyle's gone. Alan Foster's testimony about being paid to sabotage the plane. The courtroom was packed with reporters and curious onlookers. This was the kind of case that captivated people. Betrayal, greed, attempted murder. All the elements of a true crime story. Melissa's lawyer tried arguing that the messages were taken out of context, that there was no concrete proof of intent to kill. But the prosecutor had recordings of Melissa and Travis discussing the insurance payout after my accident. Alan Foster's testimony was damning. He described exactly how Melissa had approached him, offering money and appealing to an old crush he'd had on her in college. He'd been in debt, desperate, and stupid. When Melissa took the stand, she tried playing the victim. Claimed Travis had manipulated her, that she'd never wanted me hurt. But the prosecutor destroyed her story with her own messages, her own voice on recordings. The judge denied bail for both Melissa and Travis, citing flight risk and the severity of charges. I left the courthouse through a side exit to avoid reporters. Harrison walked with me, his hand on my shoulder. You did good in there. Staying calm, not reacting. I feel numb, I admitted. That woman was my wife. I thought I knew her. People hide their true selves sometimes, Harrison said. You're not responsible for her choices. The trial date was set for 4 months later. In the meantime, I filed for divorce, citing adultery and fraud. The court granted a temporary restraining order keeping Melissa away from all marital assets. I moved back into our house after it was released as a crime scene. Walking through those rooms felt surreal. I packed up Melissa's belongings and donated most of them. Kept nothing that reminded me of her except for evidence. I changed the locks, the alarm code, even repainted the bedroom where I'd found them. Erased every trace of who we'd been together. Friends reached out, offering support. Most of them had liked Melissa, had thought we were happy. Their shock mirrored my own. "Did you have any idea?" they'd ask. No. None. That was the worst part. I met Nina Rodriguez for coffee one afternoon at her request. She looked tired, older than when I'd last seen her at the gate. The investigation and media attention had taken their toll. "I've been thinking about that day," she said, stirring her coffee. "About why I warned you. Alan Foster told investigators you overheard something." She nodded. Two men talking in the boarding area. They were discussing someone named Kyle who wouldn't be coming back from New York. They mentioned a payday, insurance. At first, I thought they were just making dark jokes. But then I saw the system flag on your ticket. Something felt wrong. "You saved my life," I said simply. She looked at me with sad eyes. "I almost didn't. I almost convinced myself I was being paranoid. But I've seen too much in this job. Too many small moments that turned into tragedies because no one spoke up." We talked for an hour about life, about trust, about how you rebuild after betrayal. Nina had been through her own divorce years ago, though nothing as dramatic as mine. "You'll get through this," she promised. "It won't feel like it now, but you will. And you'll be stronger." I wanted to believe her. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, watching as prosecutors dismantled Melissa's and Travis's defenses piece by piece. Character witnesses painted Melissa as calculating and manipulative. Former colleagues described her obsession with money and status. Travis's testimony tried to shift all blame to Melissa, claiming she'd seduced and manipulated him. That she'd threatened to tell me about the affair unless he helped with her plan. But his own messages contradicted that story. He'd been an eager participant, motivated by love and greed equally. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. Melissa broke down sobbing. Travis sat stone-faced, staring at nothing. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. I left the courtroom feeling hollow. Justice had been served, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. Loss of the life I'd thought I had, the future I'd imagined. At sentencing, Melissa received 15 years in federal prison. Travis got 12. Alan Foster, thanks to his cooperation, received 5 years probation and community service. The judge's words were harsh and final. "You plotted to murder someone who trusted you, who loved you, for nothing more than money." There are no words adequate to express the depravity of such betrayal. The media coverage was intense for weeks after sentencing. "Husband escapes wife's murder plot" ran on every major news outlet. I gave one interview to a local station, wanting to control my own narrative. "I want people to understand," I said to the camera, "that evil doesn't always look like evil. It looks like someone you love. Someone you trust. Pay attention to warning signs, even small ones. And if something feels wrong, trust that feeling." The interview went viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments. People sharing their own stories of betrayal and narrow escapes. Some called me a hero. I wasn't. I was just lucky. Lucky that Nina had spoken up. Lucky that the FBI had taken it seriously. Lucky that evil had been sloppy. I sold the house 6 months after the trial. Too many ghosts. Too many memories, both real and revealed to be false. I moved to Portland, wanting a fresh start in a new city where no one knew my story. I kept in touch with Nina, who became an unexpected friend. We'd text occasionally, share articles, meet for coffee when I was back in Seattle visiting family. A year after the trial, I stood at an airport gate again. Different airport, different destination, but the same nervous energy. Flying still made me anxious, probably always would. But I refused to let fear control my life. That's what Melissa and Travis had tried to do. Control me, eliminate me, take my life for their own purposes. I'd survived. That meant living, not hiding. "Excuse me, sir?" A flight attendant approached with a warm smile. "You look nervous. First-time flyer?" I laughed. "Something like that. Just bad memories." She patted my arm kindly. "Well, you're safe with us today. I promise." I boarded the plane, found my seat, and buckled in. As we taxied for takeoff, I looked out the window at the city falling away beneath us. Somewhere down there, Melissa sat in a prison cell. Travis too. Their greed and betrayal had cost them everything. Alan Foster was rebuilding his life, trying to atone. And me? I was learning to trust again. Slowly. Carefully. But learning. The plane lifted off smoothly, climbing into clear skies. No mechanical problems. No sabotage. Just a normal flight to a new beginning. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, finally feeling something like peace. 6 months later, I met someone new. Her name was Jordan, and she was nothing like Melissa. Honest, straightforward, with her own career and independence. We took things slow, both of us carrying scars from previous relationships. "I need you to know something," I told her on our 4th date. "I was almost murdered by my ex-wife and best friend." Jordan didn't run. She listened to the whole story, asked thoughtful questions, and then said, "That's horrible. But it doesn't define you. You're not a victim anymore. You're a survivor." That perspective changed everything. I wasn't the man whose wife had tried to kill him. I was the man who'd survived, who'd rebuilt, who'd chosen to keep living and trusting despite everything. Life moved forward. I got promoted at work, traveling frequently for business. Each flight got easier. Each takeoff felt less like tempting fate and more like choosing freedom. I thought about Nina Rodriguez sometimes, grateful for her courage. About Agent Carter and Harrison Blake, who'd helped me navigate the nightmare. About the justice system that, for once, had worked. But mostly, I thought about the future. About possibilities instead of betrayals. About trust earned instead of assumed. About building something real. Sometimes fate delays your flight so you can see the truth. Sometimes it saves your life so you can actually start living it. I'd been given that chance. And I wasn't going to waste it.